welcome to the Deakin Alumni webinar with Dr. Carmel Sivaratnam and Logan Whitaker on the ALLPlay Buddy Program. Dr. Carmel Sivaratnam leads the ALLPlay Footy Research Program as a Senior Research Fellow here at Deakin University. As part of the ALLPlay Footy, Carmel manages the research and development of inclusion programs for primary school-aged children with disabilities, including the ALLPlay Buddy Program and ALLPlay Pre-Learn Day initiatives, which aims to promote a culture of inclusion across sporting contexts. Logan Whitaker is AFL's National Inclusion of All Abilities Manager. Logan is responsible for developing and implementing the National Inclusion Strategy for the AFL, including the rollout of ALLPlay resources to support the inclusion of families and children of all abilities in NAB AFL's AusKick. Thank you both so much for joining us today.
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in today for the ALLPlay Buddy Program. As Barisha has introduced, I'm Dr. Carmel Sivaratnam. And
I'm Logan Whitaker, the AFL National Inclusion Manager. Pleasure to be here with you all.
Great. So today we'll be talking about the ALLPlay Buddy Program. And just as a background, this program is part of the broader ALLPlay Footy program that the Deakin and the AFL collaborate on. And the aim of this program really is to build inclusion for children with disabilities into participation in community sport and community activities. So I might just start with a bit of an overview on what we'll talk about today. And really we're going to talk about what the need is for the Buddy Program and why are programs like this important. We'll then talk about what we ran this year as a pilot Buddy Program, after which Logan will then talk about some of the feedback that we received from the participants as well as the coach involved in the pilot. We'll then talk about some changes that we'll be making for next year's program and the plan for the rollout of the program next year. So I guess we'll first look at why we need to run programs such as this Buddy Program. Firstly, there are significantly lower rates of participation for children with disabilities in community-based physical activity, and there have been a range of barriers identified for these children to participation in these activities, and these include personal factors as well as environmental factors around the child. A survey of the Australian community conducted by the ALLPlay Program has identified that it's really the human factors that are the major deciding factors about whether or not a child participates in physical activities. So human factors involve factors around the coach, other parents, and other children as well. So within this context, the attitudes of others are really seen as an important factor in deciding whether or not a child will participate and continue to participate. And so children with disabilities tend to have higher rates of social, emotional, and behavioral difficulties, which can also impact on their participation and their ability and choice to take part in an activity. In a number of ways, a child may find the activities too challenging or overwhelming, and that might lead to parents avoiding enrolling their child in some of these activities, or it might lead to the coaches lacking confidence in coaching children with these challenges. Yeah. So the current research tells us that interventions that involve peers, the child's peers, are really quite effective in improving some of these social and emotional difficulties in children with disabilities. So peer-mediated interventions are really just interventions where peers are involved as part of the program. So the Buddy Program is an example of a peer-mediated intervention. And secondly, the research tells us that Buddy programs have been found to alter attitudes towards disability, and these are attitudes of typically developing children and adults. And these studies have looked at community settings as well as educational settings such as schools, and have found Buddy programs to be effective in altering attitudes. Okay, so that brings us to the aims of the ALLPlay Buddy Program. And as discussed, really, the major aim here is to change attitudes towards disability, and in particular attitudes of children without a disability. And the second aim is really to increase this knowledge and awareness about children of all abilities from a young age. And as part of the program, ALLPlay Buddies, so the kids who don't have a disability get a 30-minute training on what disability is, and we'll talk a bit more about that on a later slide. And given that past research has suggested that involvement in these peer-mediated interventions or buddy programs have led to improvements in social functioning and behavioural functioning, one of the core aims of this program will be to see if this buddy system improves these areas of functioning. So in these interventions, I guess the child without the disability can be seen to be acting as a model for behaviour, for skill for children who may have additional challenges. And given that AUSKIC is in a naturalistic setting, so it's not in a lab or a clinic where a child is receiving a treatment, we would expect that the improvements in social skills and behaviour will be seen beyond the footy field or beyond sort of the experimental setting to other areas of the child's functioning as well. So the study we adopt a pre-post design where parents fill out questionnaires about the child's functioning before as well as after the buddy program, and we compare this to a control group, so kids who just attend AUSKIC but not the buddy program. And having these two groups will then help us to understand the changes that happen, and it will help us to make conclusions about whether the changes are because of the buddy program or from attending AUSKIC. Okay, so just briefly what the ALLPlay Buddy Program involves. So two groups of buddies, so what we call the AAA buddies, are AUSKIC players aged 5 to 12 who have a disability or additional needs. AAA refers to Access All Abilities, which are the names for the AUSKIC centres that have inclusive facilities in place for kids with disabilities. And the second group are the ALLPlay Buddies. So these are AUSKIC players aged 5 to 12 who do not have a disability or additional needs. And what's involved in a buddy session? So these sessions take place during regular AUSKIC sessions so that we don't increase the time commitments for coaches and families. And the children, the ALLPlay Buddies receive a 30-minute briefing before the buddy program starts, and the main aim of this briefing is really to help them understand what does it mean for a child to not have the same abilities or the same strengths as I do as a child without a disability, and what being a buddy means as part of the buddy program. And during the session, it's run really as a regular AUSKIC session. So it starts with a group game generally involving the big group of players, and then it goes into footy skills and drills practice in pairs. And this is where the buddies pair up and get involved in the activities together. So the buddy program was really designed to be able to be run by coaches after they receive the information about how to run it. So the idea behind it is sustainability. So a coach can sort of just read the how-to and pick it up and use it, regardless of whether the research team is involved. Yeah. Okay. So the next slide is an example of the information that the child receives as part of the buddy program information session. They get, I guess, a discussion with the coach about what does having a disability mean, and it really takes a strengths-based approach. So, it talks about how kids are all different and all kids have strengths, as well as some things that they might find difficult. And it's also around building empathy for children with a challenge who might be attending AUSKIC. So trying to build the understanding that some things that might be easy for you might be difficult for a child with an additional need or a disability. And it also goes on to talk about what being a buddy means. So just as a background, this year's pilot involved older children without disability pairing up with a younger child. But the feedback that we received was actually that kids of all ages really enjoyed participating. So it wasn't sort of older buddies and younger buddies like the initial pilot was, but for next year's season, it'll be really looking at kids across the 5 to 12 and allowing kids across that age group to participate. Okay, so as we discussed, the pilot for this year involved one AAA Auskick Centre in southeastern Melbourne, and parents completed questionnaires and the coach completed a telephone interview at the end of the program. The child also completed a questionnaire about their attitudes towards disability, and these were the kids without a disability. And so we collected some quantitative data, survey data, and we also collected some qualitative data on from the coaches and the child's perspectives. Okay, so just a really brief overview on who participated in this pilot. So we had 13 kids altogether, and the ALLPlay Buddies, so the kids without the disabilities, there were 7 of them, and there were 6 AAA Buddies, and they experienced a range of challenges, and so that included autism, ADHD, intellectual disability, as well as some sensory difficulties such as hearing and vision as well. Yeah. And the age range of the kids was between 6 to 12 for this year.
I think it's important to note as well that those 7 children that are from the typically developing group, the ALLPlay Buddies, they were parent nominated, so they weren't randomly selected by a coach. The option went out to all parents within the centre to sign their child up to the pilot, and the parents that chose to sign their children up obviously did so because they wanted their child to experience working with a child with a disability, to experience supporting another child have success in football. And that probably harks back to some of the barriers that we have seen, and is a further question for future pilots, where the attitudes of parents can be a real barrier to participation for families with kids with disabilities. Often the kids are pretty good. It's the other mums and dads that think that the child with a disability may take up too much time with the coach and take away from any opportunity that their child has to develop their skills in any given Auskick session. So the fact that these parents nominated their children show that they've probably got it, in my mind anyway, and correct me if I'm wrong, Carmel, because I'm certainly no doctor, but show that they've probably got a bit of more sympathetic view towards families with disabilities. And so in the future, I'm not sure whether it's possible or we can build it into the research. I wouldn't mind doing something where it is a little bit more randomly selected, and that can be difficult given a typical Auskick session and the setting that it's in, but it might show that some of those parents that initially didn't want their child to participate for fear of a lack of development opportunities may come out at the end of it thinking it was a really beneficial program, and change the attitudes of those parents towards families with disabilities as well, because that has been shown to be one of the big barriers to facilitating participation throughout community sport, and specifically in Auskick. But for what we've done this year, I think another note worth making is that we deliberately started small. We deliberately started with one centre because we want to make sure we get this right. The AFL is really committed to the inclusion of children and families with disabilities into football as a whole, whether that's at Auskick participating in their local community, or whether that's attending games or being a fan of the elite side. But we want to make sure we get it right, and we don't want to go out there and do any harm or put in place a program that parents aren't going to enjoy and is going to actually see them have a negative impact on their development or a negative experience with football. So we want to do it small and we want to do it well, and we'll slowly grow it and build it from there. And hopefully one day this program runs all across Australia. But very carefully selected initial centre with an incredible driver, the local coach, which is a very, very important aspect of the test as well, of the pilot as well, because without a coach being able to drive that locally, there's only so much we can do from afar. And so by having Glenn on board, who really took the reins on this, supported us no end, has helped what we think is a pretty good package moving forward to be able to test this further and roll it out nationally. But as you can see from some of the feedback on the screen, it it was all very, very positive. Even the stuff that we asked, this is for the typically developing children, the feedback that you see on the screen at the moment. The only sort of negative one is that one of the kids didn't like doing handballing, but I think you'd find that in most groups. They all just want to kick the footy anyway. None of them want to handball. You try to teach them how to handball, and they'll just end up kicking the footy anyway. So that's a pretty standard bit of feedback for us. We're pretty used to that. But incredible to see that one of the children thought that the time was too short. They wanted to be doing it more often. And we'll get to that a little bit later, but I think there is a fine balance we need to strike there, and we probably not something we can do every week, but we might be able to increase it slightly. And again, you got to remember that we're dealing with kids here, and even though these are the typically developing kids that have provided the feedback, some of them still can't remember what happened in the session, and so you just got to take that as you do, because that's what you get when you're working with children, unfortunately, at times. But that's all fine, because even though the child doesn't really remember learning anything, we know that all the children within that session had a really positive experience. And some of the other bits of feedback there that you can see that not all kids can do the stuff that they can do, or that just everybody loves footy, is some really positive social feedback as well that will go beyond the football field and hopefully into the school grounds and into the classroom, and give these children a better understanding of some of the challenges that their buddies face in day-to-day life, not just on the football field. And then you see again what some of the, if you'd like to be a part of it again, that second point is just incredible. If they knew further out what days they were going to be there, they would make sure that they're there on those days so that they don't want to let their buddies down. And this is coming from a kid who's somewhere between 5 and 12 who just sees the value of it. And I think that's one of the really special things about this program, is that it showcases just kids' natural want to help and to include. And if we can facilitate that, I think we can make some real community change. So as you can see here again, how many did you like just NAB AFL Auskick? This is the All Abilities Buddies now. So these are the kids with disabilities. And all of them liked or loved Auskick as a whole, which isn't feedback that we always get. We do get families that struggle with Auskick. And this is where that control group for the future sessions becomes really important, to see the difference between the responses from kids that were involved with a buddy program and those that weren't, because those that weren't, we do know that still can, even in a really supportive environment, still can struggle at Auskick and still might not report that they loved it. So seeing that a lot of these kids did, which is incredible, and all of them loved the buddy days, which again just goes to show the power of sport and the power of what we're able to do here, facilitating this inclusion with the kids. So what activities did you do? And that second point is a really key one there. Just the same activities we do at Auskick, and that's a key to the ALLPlay program as a whole. We want to make sure that all the children out on the ground are participating in a similar way. Yes, it may be at their own level. So there might be kids that are slightly more advanced than others, and that's where the coaches come into play and provide them with advancements to whatever skill or activity there is. But we want all the children to be doing a similar thing, and that's because we don't want the kids with disabilities to be taken away off to the side, away from everybody else and doing their own drills. We want them to be participating the same way as everybody else. So the fact that that was noticed by one of the children for me is really positive, because that's one of the broader aims of the Auskick program, is that these kids are out here doing the same thing but just in their own way. And then again, do you want to be a part of it? And that's fine. That last one, the one no we got, again, is fine, because we know that some of these kids take a while to warm up in social settings, and some of them do prefer to participate on their own. And for a lot of the parents that sign up their children with a disability to Auskick, one of the barriers that they're trying to overcome is this want for their child to not socialise or to spend a lot of time on their own. And so hopefully they may come back into the buddy program into the future, or they may not. But at least we've had an opportunity that there wasn't there before. And as you can see, the rest of them loved it, want to do it again. And from what the coaches said, some of them have created genuine friendships that go beyond football. They've started to socialise in peer settings outside of the simply being involved in the buddy program, which again I think is incredibly important. So this is the coach's feedback. I'll let you read through that, and I'll sort of talk broadly about it. But as you can see, they ran the 3 days and then opted to run another day because the kids wanted to do more, which I think is incredible. And we're just talking to Glenn, the coach, about how successful the days were and how they ran. You could just see it and in his face and hear it in his voice, how much he personally got out of this program as well. And he said one of the greatest things that he's done in football is watching these kids run around out there together and see the typically developing kids supporting the kids with disabilities to just have a kick of the ball, which again is really incredible. And the impact that it can have on coaches in a community setting, I think, is also something we need to further explore. Because yes, there's great impacts here for both the families that are involved, but also coaches that go back into their workplaces or go on to coach junior football or senior football or whatever else they're going to do. Just the impact that this program can have on their attitudes towards disability. Again, Glenn carefully chosen for the first pilot because we knew he would really champion the cause. But looking into the future, the coach's attitude we know is so vitally important to the inclusion of kids with disabilities. So being able to affect that through a program like this, I think, is really important. And then the very bottom line there, the bottom paragraph about just changing his view on what these kids can do, because in other settings, a lot of AAA kick centres don't run grid games because it is very difficult for the kids to understand the structure and the rules, and often it just turns into chaos. But with the help of the buddies, they were able to run a grid game, which the coach, even Glenn, being as positive and supportive as he is, didn't think they would be able to do. So again, changing attitudes and supporting the kids to do the same as what everybody else does, I think, is a really important aspect of this. So as you can see, some of the preliminary indications, we've spoken a little bit about them, but just in general, an increased awareness of disability, which again was one of the broad aims of the ALLPlay program moving into All Abilities Auskick, was to create some generational change. If we can normalise the inclusion of kids with disabilities between the ages of 5 and 12, and that attitude towards disability can follow these children through the rest of their lives, hopefully in 20 or 30 years' time when they're employing people, they have a more positive attitude towards people with disabilities in the workplace, and can have a real flow-on effect to the rest of the community simply by initiating a buddy program at your local Auskick Centre. Who would have thought? But that was one of the broad aims, and so to be able to increase the children's awareness at that really young age hopefully does flow on and follow them for the rest of their lives. And then similar point number 2, those pro-social attitudes towards the children of all abilities, because you do hear that when you're out there at Auskick centres. You do hear other parents saying, "Oh no, we don't want our child playing with those kids because it's going to stop their development." We do hear other kids saying horrible things, and kids will be kids. But if we can try and promote a positive attitude, we can help to shift some of the bullying that might happen out on Auskick fields or might happen in schoolyards as well. And then, like we just spoke, shifted the coach's attitude as well towards the ability levels of these children and what they can do, and sort of helped him to remove a bit of a glass ceiling that he'd put on those kids, and saw them play a grid game like everybody else. And so this is something we spoke about earlier as well, some of the future buddy programs, and this is where we have to find a balance, because they'd like to see more frequent buddy sessions, but I think we have to be careful there. We can't do it every week. It simply would be too onerous, and it probably would hinder the development of both groups, because at the end of the day, they're there. A lot of their parents send them there to learn the foundations of football, and we need to strike that balance right in the middle so that we can have a best of both worlds scenario, specifically when we're talking about parents that may not have opted in, like these 7 parents, or the 7 parents of these children did. They nominated their child for this. If we get to a point where we are just picking a group and new kids are doing this week and having a broader impact in that sense, we have to find that balance, because there are kids that will just want to go out there and participate on their own and not want to do this every week. So it's a bit of a slow burn. And then, as Carmel spoke about as well, that it's not necessarily, we thought that the older buddy, the older typically developing child pairing up with a younger child with a disability was the right way to go about it. An older child with a little bit more maturity, a little bit more understanding as well, a little bit more able to take instruction and to then lead, isn't necessarily the case. And we'll explore this more in 2018 throughout the other pilots. But it could be a case where we're pairing kids up that are of a similar age, and that might work just as well. But we'll have further research into that and further data to come back on that. And then for 2018, where, like Carmel has already mentioned as well, we're going to expand this to 4 centres that are going to be running the Buddy program. We're also going to compare that to 4 All Abilities Auskick centres that aren't running the Buddy program. So when we go back to that slide about what did you like Auskick, we may see that in those 4 centres that don't run a Buddy program, we may see that some of those kids don't respond so positively, because some of them do still struggle just turning up to Auskick every week. But that remains to be seen. Hopefully something like the Buddy program can really support kids to want to go and want to turn up. And then we'll also have a look at the social, emotional, behavioural functioning of those children within both of those centres. So I'll do a little bit of a deeper dive from a research perspective. Just before we move on to questions, I think it's also important to note that obviously this isn't rocket science. This is pretty basic, and it's not the first time that it's been done. There's certainly other organisations out there that run Buddy programs. I think every primary school in Australia probably runs a Buddy program with their grade 6 kids, looking after kids in prep. I know that I certainly did that when I was in primary school. However, what is new with this is the level of research that's going into it, because I haven't seen anywhere in the world this level of detail in terms of the outcomes of running a Buddy program like this. And it may be out there. Like I said, I'm no doctor and don't spend my life researching these things, but I think it's really exciting that from an AFL perspective, we have such a strong partnership with an organisation like Deakin and are able to do a little bit of a deeper dive into the benefits of these sort of programs, because, like I said, we want to make sure that when we're moving forward and we're trying to promote inclusion, we're doing it in the right way, and we're doing it in a way that really benefits families and benefits the children as well. So, yeah, certainly worth noting that we haven't reinvented anything here, but the exciting part for me is the research and being able to refine it to a point backed by evidence that's really something beneficial for the whole community when we do roll it out Australia-wide.
Thank you very much, Logan and Carmel. What a wonderful presentation. So it's now time for a question and answer time. So I'll leave a few moments for you to type in your questions now. So our first question, what are some of the challenges children with disabilities face in Auskick currently?
I'll take that.
Yeah.
Some of the challenges are pretty typical of the challenges that they face in other aspects of their life as well. So some of it can simply be accessing the centre. And that can be in terms of information. So knowing that there's a centre out there that exists that can cater for the needs of the child. That's a big barrier for us, as well as how we properly market this and ensure that all parents out there know that Auskick is an option for them. Because certainly talking to the community, we get that feedback. You talk to families in a special school setting about whether or not they've thought about attending their local Auskick centre, and the first thing is, oh no, we never knew we could do that. So access is a big one, but then also physical access at a community centre as well, ensuring that the grounds are safe. There might be enclosed gates for children that are prone to running away, or those that may use mobility devices, so wheelchairs or walking frames. Sometimes a muddy oval isn't the best environment for those kids, so physical access can be an issue as well. But I think what we've discovered the big issue is attitude, and that's attitude of the typically developing parents and the typically developing coaches. So often these people haven't had a lot of experience in disability. They might not have a family member or a friend or have ever come across someone with a disability before in their lives. And I understand that. It can be daunting, and often these parents or these children just don't want to do or say the wrong thing, especially the coaches. So part of this program is to really address that key barrier, that key challenge in the attitude of the community about inclusion.
Thank you, Logan. Next question from Michelle. Great pilot and very interesting to hear about the findings. I was just wondering if you mentioned that there was also a quantitative measure that was implemented in the pilot at baseline at post program.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so the measure that we used, it was called a CATCH questionnaire, which is the Chidoki-McMaster Attitudes Towards Handicap Scale. And that looked at a number of components of attitudes towards disability. So it looked at the affective component, so the child's feelings towards others with disability, the child's behavioral intention, so how they act towards kids with disability, and a cognitive component, which is their thoughts and attitudes towards disability more broadly. And so, yes, we did give the child sort of the measures pre and post AUSKIC. And as mentioned, we had 6 typically developing kids, and we had about 3 kids who returned that questionnaire. And from those, obviously it's too small to run sort of quantitative analysis, but just from sort of observational changes in the patterns of data, it does look like the attitudes towards disability sort of shifted positively. And for next year's season, where we can run it with a much larger sample, we'll be able to run more sophisticated analysis to actually look at whether these changes are real and whether these changes are actually generalizable to a larger population.
Thanks, Carmel. Our next question from Leah. As a volunteer in the program, what sort of roles are available to us?
So volunteers are the lifeblood of Australian sport, and we certainly would not have any AUSKIC centres if we didn't have volunteers out there supporting what we try to do in the community. And so first and foremost, we love volunteers. So anyone that's interested, thank you very much for all the work that you've done in the community facilitating sport for all children. But in terms of specifically within AUSKIC, there's all sorts of volunteer roles that need to be fulfilled on any given Saturday, and that can be from the head coach to a supporting coach, and that can be all these roles are male or female. We have increasing numbers of mums wanting to be coaches. Thank you to the AFLW for pushing that message. But there's really no limit in terms of their involvement on the day. So being out there physically helping with the kids, but there's also plenty of background stuff. There's plenty of administration work that needs to go into it. A big part of this, the All Abilities AUSKIC is collecting the information from the families about the child. So we want to make sure that coaches are as prepared as possible for the children that are coming into their centre. And you will have seen on some of those slides that we had specific diagnosis down for each of these children. So if we can help prepare those coaches in the lead up to the session to know the types of things that these children need support with, some of their challenges, what sort of interventions that work in school or at home for them, and we can prepare those coaches. That gives those coaches a better opportunity to provide a really positive experience for that family. So that admin support in the background is something that definitely goes unnoticed from a volunteer perspective, because they can take a little bit of time chasing up forms from parents and making sure all the coaches know who's who in the zoo and who's going to be there on a Saturday. So that's a really important role. And then also the stuff just on a Saturday morning as well, or Friday night, whenever the AUSKIC sessions run. Cooking a barbecue, working in the canteen, and just generally supporting around the AUSKIC Centre. There's plenty of stuff that happens that wouldn't happen without the support of really dedicated volunteers.
Thanks, Logan. Our next question from Melinda. Melinda is located in New South Wales. Is there any equivalent to AUSKIC here? If so, I haven't heard of it. There's not much about it in the media.
Yeah, so New South Wales is one of those tough markets for the AFL as a whole, but certainly doing as much as we can to grow our presence throughout the area. And again, with the All Abilities AUSKIC, that really has started in Victoria and grown from there. We do have a couple of centres in New South Wales that are up and running. I actually am meeting with the head of community from AFL New South Wales tomorrow while she's down here in Victoria to plan for a broader rollout moving forward. But we do have some, for those around the country, we do have some centres in South Australia. We have some centres in WA, a couple in Queensland, heading down to Tasmania soon to start the rollout down there, and the Northern Territory as well. But like I did say during the presentation, we want to make sure we do this slowly, and we want to make sure we do it really well. We don't want to go out there and promise the world to families that have been promised a lot of things and haven't been delivered. So we want to make sure that if we're advertising that there's an All Abilities AUSKIC Centre near them, that they can go and know they're going to have a positive experience. So we know we could probably go out there and do it quicker, but we're deliberately not doing that. We're deliberately making sure that the quality's there so that these families have a really positive experience. But in short, yes, there is All Abilities Auskick in New South Wales. However, it's spread pretty thin. And like I said, meeting tomorrow with the head of community from AFL New South Wales to plan a broader rollout for next year.
Thanks, Logan. And is there information on the ALLPlay website
Yes,
about the centres?
So allplayfooty.org.au, you will find links through to all of the AFL state bodies, so AFL New South Wales website, and on there is a section on inclusion, and you'll be able to find where those centres are.
Great, thanks, Logan. Our next question from Pierre in Mildura. Is there consideration given to rolling out the program in rural and remote areas of Victoria and South Australia?
Yes, there absolutely is. The way that AFL football development staff is structured is that we have regions, and there are full-time staff based in all of their regions tasked with developing football. That's their role, football development manager. And so we aim to have an All Abilities Auskick Centre in each of our development regions, and some of the bigger ones, a couple. However, like I said, it's a slow burn. So we do have some in regional Victoria. We have some down Warrnambool way. We have a couple out in Gippsland. We have some in Ballarat. We're setting one up in Bendigo. And then there's a few up Albury, Wodonga, Wangaratta way as well. They will eventually reach all of our regions. That's the plan. However, similar to my answer about New South Wales, it is a bit of a slow burn, and we need to make sure we do it right and have the right people in place before we launch into it.
Thanks, Logan. Our next question from Ankit. I think this would have had a very positive impact on kids' confidence. Was there a specific example that stood out and could be used to motivate other kids, and especially parents, to join in? As this is a sensitive area in the society, is there a follow-up activity on this program which I might have missed in the conversation?
Okay. So in terms of increasing confidence, I think really the advantage of having a small sample this year was that we could really look at each of the kids and how their confidence and other factors may have improved as well. And I think it was quite unanimous with the coaches and the parents' responses and the kids' responses as well. And their confidence came through in a couple of ways. I think wanting to attend more sessions is something that doesn't happen too often, does it, Logan? Especially for kids with disabilities. And so that's really a good indicator of the child really enjoying it. And sorry, what was the second part of that question?
Is there a follow-up activity of this program which they might have missed in the conversation?
So this pilot, although it was a pilot at the centre, we ran it this year, we'll encourage them, and I have no doubt that they'll run the same program again. So this isn't intended to be a go in, do it for 1 year and then fall away. It's intended to be really sustainable. And the idea is that we support it for the first year, and then we fall away, and it becomes community-led and community-run. And so the Auskick Centres just does it as part of what they do every year. They run a buddy program. So that's really where the follow-up lies. And that may be some of those same kids that are involved in it again. It might be new kids, and it might be some of those kids might drop out and just participate in Auskick as per normal. But that'll be really interesting to watch into the future as well, whether these kids do come back and want to be involved in the buddy program again. And then in terms of helping spread the message, definitely all this positive feedback that we've got from the parents, the kids and the coach just makes that so much easier when we go and speak to other Auskick centres about implementing a program like this. If we can say, this is where we've done it, this is how easy it was, and these are some of the results, all of a sudden other Auskick centres will be a lot more interested in being able to implement them for 2018. So it makes my life a touch easier.
Thanks, Logan. Next question from Melinda. Are children who participate in the clinic aware of the social stigma surrounding their specific issues?
That's a really good question, and it would be dependent on the child, I think. Some parents will have, like I said, different attitudes towards disability and just a different attitude towards that social stigma. So some of those kids probably go in having not much of an idea, but some others would have sort of preconceived ideas of what children with disabilities can and can't do. And that's one of the great bonuses to this program is being able to break down some of those initial thoughts and feelings about disability, and proving that these kids just like footy just like I do, like some of that feedback that came back. But did you have anything to add on that, Carmel?
Yeah, I think just going on what Logan said in terms of the kids attending, because there's such a broad range of kids attending Auskick, so there might be a child with physical disability, or there might be a child with intellectual disability. The child's, I guess, awareness of the social stigma may be different from each other. So a child with, for example, high functioning or cognitively intact child with autism may be a bit more of an awareness of the attitudes of others versus a child with developmental delay or intellectual disability. And the hope is that, regardless of the child's awareness of the stigma, the hope is that the buddy program breaks down that sense the child may have that others around them are viewing or may view them differently or negatively. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Carmel. Next question. This program is wonderful. Are there any future plans to transfer this program to the arts, so like classroom activities?
The future for ALLPlay is pretty broad, to be honest. And Carmel can probably speak a little bit more about some of the other areas that we are moving into, but there is an ALLPlay dance program that has just started to get up and running. And so in terms of the arts, absolutely, there's an implication there. But also, we see real opportunity within an education setting. And that's both from a primary school through to secondary school, but also into further education, tertiary education as well, and opening up those pathways for people with disabilities that may not have been there before through similar programs to this. And we see that the opportunities really are endless. And while it might be starting with football, it's certainly not going to end there.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a great model you can adapt easily to other programs. Our next question from Pierre. Have you considered the positive impact this program can have if it is endorsed and supported by NDIS?
So we're working really closely with the NDIS on a number of different programs, and they're very similar to the AFL in the sense that they want to see it done right and want to see it done well before any sort of official endorsement. And I must be careful speaking on their behalf, but I think I'd be safe to say that they're very similar to us in taking the right steps in this area, ensuring that whatever is rolled out, endorsed by, that has our logos on it, is a really quality program. But yes, we have a really close partnership with the NDIS, and we're working hand in hand with them, because I think you're absolutely right. The impact the NDIS can have on the community as a whole, and also people with the disability, is incredible. And the fact that we're in the room with them puts us really in a really great place for future collaboration and future endorsement by them for some of our programs.
Thank you. Next question. A child with Asperger's I know participated in Auskick for a short while, showed promise, then dropped out due to sledging related to his Asperger's. Very disheartening for him. Any way we can work around this?
Well, the buddy program is one of the areas that we hope to be able to work around that, because we do know that kids can be cruel and kids can tease, and bullying is a huge issue. But that's one of the broad aims of this buddy program, is to start to break down some of the stigma that is attached to a child with a disability, unfortunately, and to prove to the other children that they're all just there for the same reason. We're all just there to play football. And we do still hear those horrible stories, and worse. We hear stories where coaches have turned away kids that have autism or other disabilities because they don't feel that they can cater to their needs. So that's not even other children, that's adults turning away kids. So that was one of the reasons we started this program, is to try and change some of those attitudes and make it a really safe place for all kids to come and do something that's a pretty natural born right in Melbourne, and if not the rest of Australia, which is kick a footy.
Thanks, Logan. Okay, thanks everyone for joining us today. I think we'll wrap the session. Thank you very much, Dr. Carmel and Logan, for presenting this session to us today.
Thanks,
and thank you for the audience for all of your questions. We had some really, really good questions today. And you can submit feedback to us at deakinalumni@deakin.edu.au. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and thanks for joining us today.